Welcome, everybody, to this edition of The Edge on 2xzone.com. I'm your host, Jason Frieda, joined by the man known as The Beast, Dan Severn. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me there, Jason.
Hey, Dan, so the last time I personally saw you was at Ring of Honor's Final Battle last December. So what were your thoughts on ROH, and how did that appearance actually come about?
Well, I mean, I like the product that Jim Cornette is putting together. It's putting wrestling back into professional wrestling. You know, I guess I kind of get turned out sometimes when it seems like there's more promos, long drawn out storylines. I'd rather see, the market says professional wrestling. Give people some professional wrestling. Yeah, I basically originally met Jim. When I had my stint with the WWF, now known as WWE, when I was there, I got a chance to know him. He was actually very frustrated with the creative team because he says they don't have a clue as to what to do with you. He says you're the most marketable guy out of anyone here because you're legitimate.
There you go.
And he said you should just be going down there and just throw belts off to the side, just go out there and dismantle people. So literally, he actually had come up with the idea of me being Goldberg before there was ever was a Goldberg in WCW.
Ken Shamrock was actually supposed to be at that show, but he had a conflict. Were you aware of those plans for Ken to be there as well?
I did really, I was aware of it, that he was going to be there, because it was going to be, Ken was going to be a coach for one of the athletes. I was going to be coach for the other athletes. It just gives us history between Ken and myself. So it was just a continuation of a storyline from competitors to now coaching on the opposite sides of the spectrum.
And it definitely would have been great to see you guys together in the same arena again, for sure. Speaking of Ken, I know recently you said that 2012 is probably going to be your last year of fighting, and you named a couple guys that you'd like to have matches with, Ken being one of them. And after that Ring of Honor show, I know you did a little recording where you kind of laid that out to Ken and offered the challenge up to him. Well, he was on our show, and he actually accepted your challenge and said that he would love to fight you this year. So did anything ever materialize from that?
Well, so far, not. But although I do have a couple of different promotions talking to me, I'll say it's a possibility, but to me, it'll be a rather fleeting type of a possibility. I've been thinking about getting out of MMA for like the last couple of years, just by the time moving on. That's tough thing for any athlete to finally leave something that's such a huge part of their life. What I was looking for was one more defining moment type of a match, something that I could put all my eggs into and train hard for, and just know that win or lose, this is my last hurrah. Well, I put out a couple years back. I actually put out phone calls and emails and stuff like that to Shamrock, to Mark Coleman, and to Hoist Gracie. I spoke to 2 out of the 3 directly. It just boiled down to logistics, and I hate to say it, money. So I may or may not get that last hurrah. I just finally decided that I put out a press release as of December 2011 to all the various promotions and or promoters that I knew. Just letting them know that 2012 will be my final year of competition, and if they were ever thinking about using me, this is come 2013. If you come to me at that point, then I'll be like, no. I gave you forewarning. I'm going to be putting my effort and stuff like that into other areas. I'll still be in mixed martial arts, just no longer as a competitor. I run my own mixed martial arts company known as the Danger Zone, and I run a small professional wrestling company known as Price of Glory. I have a 10,000 square foot training facility on my property. I bounce back and forth between Michigan, Arizona, and the new additive is back forth into West Virginia. I do believe that I will probably end up with a home in all 3 areas, but utilizing some type of sporting background and business-wise, that will be keeping me bouncing between those 3 locations.
So how do you cut up your time between those 2 promotions, your MMA training facility and your wrestling promotion?
I tell you, Jason, to put it kind of bluntly, I have so many irons in the fire that I'm not real happy at times with the effort that goes into it. I kind of feel that to put it real bluntly, sometimes it's just a half-ass effort. but I know that my half-ass effort is probably better than what most people could do if that was the only thing that they had to concentrate on. That is my gift. I am meticulous with details and stuff like this. Sometimes it's kind of hard for me to not be that micro manager. I like to give people jobs and duties and hope that they'll get done, just knowing it's not you doing it. And that's the hard part about it. If I could really cut out cookie-cutter clones, I'd like to have another half a dozen of me, just younger models, because I would definitely keep one of them out there as that MMA competitor, because it's with the opportunities that are rising right now, it's unbelievable, the opportunities that these young competitors have. Sky's the limit.
From a trainer perspective, what are some of the names of guys that have trained with you over the years?
Well, I mean, the people that I've simply just helped get their start in mixed martial arts, probably the best two names would be Don Fye and Rashad Evans. Don Fye, definitely from that old school, no holds barred era still. Don was one of my wrestlers at Michigan State, at Arizona State University when I was coaching there. And Rashad Evans, he started coming on down when he found out I had a training facility down there doing his training for mixed martial arts. Did the first of his amateur matches on my company, Danger Zone, and then I believe he did his first couple of pro matches with me as well. And then basically I'm the guy that helped get him into the Ultimate Fighter show as a heavyweight, even though Rashad was not a heavyweight. He's a 205 pounder, but knowing that a 205 pounder as a wrestler means that they weigh more like around 225.
Right.
So he would have just been a smaller heavyweight. But when you look at wrestlers in general, if you look at it per weight class, I don't care what organization, if they're looking at Strike Force, Bellator, UFC, King of the Cage, Gladiator Challenge, if you look at the top 10 guys per weight class, I'll bet 8 or 9 of those guys per weight class are wrestlers. And I would say that just to brag about wrestling, but and not just the guys that just spent 1 or 2 years in high school and then quit. I'm talking about a guy that actually did something in the sport, because there is already a work ethic and a mindset. So I contribute all my success to my amateur wrestling background.
Well, you briefly mentioned the no-holds-barred days of UFC, and those are obviously the days when you were at your peak and champion of the UFC. What are your thoughts between how it's moved from the no-holds-barred days to the UFC product in the present day?
Well, honestly, there, Jason, it had to make changes, concessions, whatever you want to call it here. Otherwise, we would be talking about it in the past tense. There's been 3 different ownerships of the Ultimate Fighting Championship Company. The very first one was Holy and Gracie and Art Navy. And then it went from there to the Semaphore Entertainment Group, Bob Meyerowitz. And Bob probably owned it during the worst time, because you had Senator John McCain that was rallying the forces between legislators, athletic commissioners, and politicians to simply snuff out this no-holds-barred competition format. And then with the Fertitta brothers, I think, owning something like 90% of that company, and then Dana White owning, I think, around either 10% or less. I know just within the last year or so, that company has sold off either 10 or 11% of the company to an international firm, because they're looking for more and more expansion overseas, Asian market, Chinese market, Indian market. So they're just looking for ways of branching out and to make it even a bigger sport yet.
Let's talk a little bit about your UFC career. So what would you attribute to your start in the fighting business?
Well, honestly, there, Jason, it's probably kind of a sad story. I hate to have all the listeners sitting there crying about, Dan Severn and how we ended up started. Basically, make a long story short, I ended up leaving the coaching ranks at Michigan State University, because I wasn't making all that much money. I'm thinking, I got a young family, stuff like this. I can't continue to do this to my family. So I left Michigan State University, and I went to work in the automotive industry. I had a degree. My degree was actually in education, but I was quite a ways into my master's program, and my master's program was what they call a Master's of Education with the field of specialization. My field of specialization being manufacturing. I got into working in the automotive industry as quality control, being able to read instrumentation and stuff like that. So I ended up doing that for about a year, And the guy and I was commuting 82 miles one way because I didn't always put my family in case the job didn't work out. Well, the guy who hired me at one plant went on down to another location down in Coldwater, Michigan. He wanted me to be part of this new venture. He's offering me more money now, and he's offering me profit sharing. You know, all the bells, buzzers, and whistles. I'm looking at my age. I'm thinking, okay, I've got to do the corporate gig here now, give up the next 30 years of my life, and then retire to go watch blah, blah, blah. And I asked him, I said, well, how long do I have? He goes, 2 weeks. Jason, in 2 weeks, I sold a home. I bought a home. I went to work, and at the end of the first week, I did not have a job.
Wow.
And that was kind of devastating to me. Couldn't even find the guy that hired me. He was like missing in action. I talked to an attorney friend of mine at any kind of recourse, stuff like that. And he's like, with the at-will clause, I didn't have anything to stand on. And then he basically says, "Dave, you need to sign up for unemployment. It's the first thing you need to do." Like, oh, I said, how? I said, I've never been unemployed in my entire life. And this was back in fall of 91, 92, when the United States was in the last big recession at that point.
Right.
Around about that same time, the United States Olympic Committee came up with a new rule that athletes could be both amateur and professional simultaneously. Unless you're in high school athletics or collegiate athletics, you'd still be governed by NCAA rules or your high school athletic association rules. I was well past my collegiate eligibility, so I could have my cake and eat it too. By day, I'm looking for a job. I had been approached by some professional wrestling companies in the mid-'80s. Now I have a chance to really explore it. So a friend of mine who was actually the president of the Michigan Wrestling Club, which was another company I'd worked for, was also a professional wrestler. So I used to talk to him about that. I basically said I need to do something here now, and he's one introduced me to Al Snow, and I used to travel to Lima, Ohio, was doing my professional wrestling training at night, and lo and behold, about the same time there, I get a flyer about a tough man contest coming up. Tough man contest, 3 1-minute rounds, and they wear, I believe, 16-ounce gloves, and they're just guys are just throwing wild haymakers, stuff like that. They beat each other.
Right.
Jason, I never balled my fist up against my fellow man, but I needed $1,000. And I just tell people, 2 days, 7 men later, I walked out of that ring with $1,000. And so my pugilistic career sprung at that point in time. And I have never looked back, and literally some of that same fuel still fuels me to this day. I guarantee you, one day there will be a movie about what I endured, what I went through, and come out on top of all this.
Let's talk about one fight in your career that really sticks out the most in your mind.
I don't have really one match that really stands out in my career. I would say that one event, if I had to highlight just one event, would have been going for the ultimate title. That was the first time that the Ultimate Fighting Championships was bringing back various champions and or runner-ups. Again, to your listeners there, most of them don't have a clue when we mention words like no holds barred, and because that's where the roots of mixed martial arts came from. It morphed into from no holds barred to mixed martial arts because of what was coming down upon Bob Meyer with stuff like this. A lot of concessions had to be made. What people are watching today, mixed martial arts has approximately 37 rules. Part of those 37 rules, there are weight classes, there are time periods, the athletes wear gloves, and they fight one opponent in an evening. Back in the no-holds-barred era, you only had to abide by 2 rules. Those being, do not bite your opponent, do not stick your fingers in their eye sockets. No eye gouging. That was the only 2 rules. Anything else you could possibly think of when you were good to go, and I used to tell people, let your imagination go wild as to what you could do to other people. Because when I make that comment, I have all these people out there, they're like, well, you could headbutt, you could see him in the... I go, did you fight it? Or did you stick it in someone's eye? I said, you were good to go. And people are just blown away. And I said, there's no weight classes. There were no time periods. It was bare knuckle action, and it was an 8-man tournament. You had to face and defeat 3 opponents and less than a 2-hour pay-per-view. And I mean, point blank, I don't say this as being braggadocious. I always tell people I simply fight facts. I am the only Triple Crown champion in the UFC's no-holds-barred era. And since it's illegal to do that, I'm it. And when you look at what I accomplished over the years in that arena, take into account the age that I started, just prior to turning 37 years of age, most fighters would have retired at that point in time. World record with 7 title belts, I've got 20 or 21 now. I lost count. And there's only 4 people in the world that have 100 MMA matches. I'm one of those cast of characters. The ironic part is I faced and defeated, and the closest one to my age is 15 years. So it's like, is there another thing? No. Never was, never will be. I'm a unique commodity for what I've done in my amateur wrestling career, what I've done in my professional wrestling career, and what I've done in the mixed martial arts arena. When you look at age, accountability, matches, lack of training, and I say that because you might think, well, what does that mean? In all my cage fighting matches, all the years I've been doing this, I've only taken out 2 training camps. Once went about 32 days of my life. Once I took out 35 days of my life, so I literally had to put everything else on hold. And when people think about this, like, wow. And the fact that I am lifetime chemical free. I can't say that about most of the opponents I have gone against.
Let's talk a little bit about pro wrestling, since you just brought it up. So you transitioned over to pro wrestling in 1995, I believe it was, with the NWA. Is that right?
I believe it was around that 90. Well, between 92 actually was when I started doing the professional wrestling. Yeah, because as soon as that green light came, I was training professional wrestling, and I took to it like a fish takes the water, in the aspect that, well, I had to put food on the table. I had to keep a roof over my kids' head and stuff like this. So I did not train all that long before I actually had my very first match. And when doing matches, I used my real name, I used my real amateur credentials, and realistically, only after about, I think, 4 or 5 matches, I happened to be on a show. Gentleman was up from Nashville, Tennessee. His ring name was a Dirty White Boy, and I think a few other aliases that he went by. And he asked me if that was legit, and I said it was. He says, you want to be over in Japan doing this thing called shoot fighting or shoot wrestling. I gave him a business card, athletic resume. 3 days later, I get a phone call. 10 days later, I'm in Nashville for a tryout. 30 days later, I'm in Tokyo, Japan, in front of a 12,000-seat crowd. Did not have a clue as to what I was doing. All I know is my Asian opponent kicked me half a dozen times really, really hard. I grabbed him, flinging him all over the place, dismantling him, much to the crowd's delight. And the Japanese interpreter simply said, "Don Saban, you will become a superstar in Japan." And I'm like, I don't know about that superstar stuff, but I'm definitely going to protect them.
Let's talk a little bit about when you moved into the WWF, now known as WWE. How did that transition go, and who actually got you over there?
Well, I mean, originally, it was with the idea that, they found out both that Ken Shamrock and myself, we both had a professional wrestling background, and they thought that they could continue this feud between each other from the mixed martial arts days, carry that back over to professional wrestling days. Unfortunately, it never materialized. Ken went to work almost 1 year ahead of myself. In the process of me negotiating with them, I became the very first non-exclusive athlete ever in the WWF history. I could work for anybody, including WCW and ECW, because they both existed at the time. And I think that was also probably the Achilles heel that made it difficult for them wanting to do any kind of a push with me, because they realized, if we throw a belt onto Dan or title onto Dan, what's to stop him from going over to WCW or an ECW?
Right.
But at the same time, Jason, the professional wrestling industry is a very industry. Because it's that world of fantasy, there's a lot of politicking that takes place. I'm not a good politician. I always tell people I'm politically incorrect. I could be. I call it as I see it. Really, to stress that point home. One day, while I'm just rather young in my career with the WWF, probably just a couple weeks into it, here I am sitting in the cafeteria having something to eat, simply working away, making phone calls, stuff like this. Jim Cornette comes by and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, "Dan," he says, "I'm not sure what you're doing." He says, "But you make all the boys are nervous around you."
Huh.
And I look at him, Jim, I said, "I'm not doing anything." I said, with any company, you have good days, you have bad days. I said, I'm sitting back and I'm watching theater unfold before me. And he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "What's professional wrestling?" Professional wrestling is nothing but the world fantasy. It's like Halloween. You get to dress up and be somebody else that night. And I started pointing on the cafeteria, and I pointed at what some of these so-called superstars. I go, and you see, they're over there, and they're talking to this creative team member. I go, "Why do you think he's going to talk?" He go, "Politicking. He's trying to get a push, trying to push an angle, all for his own personal agenda." I said, short of him pulling out a tube of chapstick and kissing this man right on the ass, I said, how much more can he really be doing? Ironically, a couple weeks later, Vince McMahon launches the Kiss My Ass Club.
There you go.
Now, what do you think that idea might have stemmed from?
I guess we didn't know you were part of creative, Dan.
Me neither. when I finished up saying to Jim, I said, "Jim, I'm not a politician." I said, "I can't do that." I said, "I would rather shove my size 12 foot up someone's ass as opposed to kiss it." Guess who was not asked to be in the Kiss My Ass Club?
Dan Severn.
Yours truly. Yeah, exactly. So I think I should be credited with giving them that idea. At the same token, I wasn't asked to be in it either.
That is definitely a funny story for sure.
Yep.
Now, you were supposed to be on the first ever NWA-TNA show, but I know that didn't pan out. What happened there?
Well, called being a busy person, and I had a scheduling conflict. And really, I had no scheduling conflict. It's just that TNA, being a brand new product, weren't getting the kind of ticket sales that they were hoping for. So they were trying to start a company and launch an angle right off the get-go, and that was to have a heavyweight title bout on there. And I told them, and they used to run their pay-per-views on a Wednesday night. And I go, "Guys," I said, "I've got a commitment. I've had my commitment on my schedule for some time now. I said, I can't do the particular Wednesday night that you're looking for." I said, "But I'm available the Wednesday after, the Wednesday after that, and the Wednesday after that." But they really kind of pushed things where it's like, I can't do it. I gave my word. I'm slated to do something. And that's one of the things kind of boggles my mind about the wacky world of professional wrestling. The longer I've been around it, the less I understand it, because it does not follow the most basic principles of business 101. It's just there's so much lying and deceit. To me, it's like even when Vince got a chance to know me, he's like, as I'm in the office with him and Jim Ross, certain things are being discussed. That a couple of different dates and times, stuff like that came up. Finally, he's like, "Well, how old are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm 40." And then he looked at Jim and he said, "Well, Jim, who's the oldest rookie ever been?" And Jim Ross said, "This points over to me." He says, "Jim," but I did not look my age, nor did I act my age in the process. But my whole point of telling that story was Vince was so comfortable with his advantage. So how do you want to operate? Do you want to work on a handshake? Do you want to pull out a napkin and write it on up? I said, "Vince, as much as I would like to believe that could actually take place nowadays, I said, I'm a little bit jaded. I said, I would rather know that it hit paper in black and white."
Well, was there any one guy in the wrestling business that you really did particularly enjoy working in the ring with?
Well, Owen Hart, because of his own amateur wrestling background, I could do things with him I couldn't do with a lot of other guys. He actually had a good sense of humor about him and stuff like that as well. So I really enjoyed the few different matches that we had with each other. Even in one particular match, I mean, literally, he lifts me up and goes to a power driver, and because he wore baby oil and stuff like this, I actually split a little bit too far south. So when he did bring me down, he landed me right on top of my head, and I received a stinger, and I laid there. This actually during an actual live show, and it freaked him out just the way that I laid there, so still. And I had a mouthpiece. I used to wear a mouthpiece in, and I shoved the mouthpiece out with my tongue, and it rolled across my face and landed on the canvas. And I do believe he thought that he'd either paralyze me or hurt me really bad. And literally, this is a live show. He's trying to stay in character, and as he kind of just kneels down to find me, and he's kind of like, he's saying underneath his breath, he's like, dude, he says, "You're okay." He says, "Please squeeze my hand." I just delayed it for a little bit. I squeezed his hand, and he's like, "Oh shit." I took that same token. Once we got back in the back room, I go, "Dude," I said, "you did not do the most basic principles of professional wrestling." I said, "I'm supposed to protect you, and you're supposed to protect me. You didn't do your job."
Hey, Dan, so looking forward a little bit, do you have anything else on the agenda as far as wrestling bookings or fighting bookings coming up this year?
Yes, matter of fact, in the month of May alone, well, I've only got really one professional booking that's taking place, but I will be back in West Virginia, and I'm just in Wheeling, and I'm at a loss right now what the name of the promotion is, but they want to induct me into their professional wrestling Hall of Fame and have me part of the show again, just for just kind of honor me for what all I've accomplished in the world of professional wrestling and all the notoriety I gave to professional wrestling just by bringing the NWA championship belt out to the UFC octagon. I gave a great deal more notoriety, and you're even seeing what Brock Lesnar doing right now in the WWE. Now he's going to be wearing all full MMA gear and stuff of that nature.
Well, Dan, just before we wrap things up, is there any particular way that your fans can reach out to you, either your website or Facebook or Twitter maybe?
Yeah, well, I actually have all of the above. The probably easiest one is go to dansevern.com. That's the website. It shows you all the things I've either been involved with in the past or what I have coming up in the future. As you make that comment before, I'm a busy person. I've always been a busy person, and I will continue to be that same busy person. I have a lot of goals and aspirations of what I want to do, even though I will finish my next martial arts career. I'll still be involved with it. I'll still be doing some form of competition. I might go back and do some amateur wrestling in the freestyle or in Greco-Roman. I might want to go into some master divisions, go for the world championships once again. But these are things that are on my possibilities of doing. Me, life is competitive, and then I'm a competitor all the way through and through. But Facebook, I have all the stuff. Go to my website, dansevern.com. That'd be probably your best starting point.
Well, fans, you heard it from Dan. Make sure to follow him on his website. That's www.dansevern.com to keep up on his upcoming year of fighting and appearances and whatnot. And Dan, we thank you for the time and best of luck in 2012 to you.
Thank you, Jason. Maybe we'll do a follow-up gig after 2012 just to see how the year wrapped up.